Good morning, everyone. This is Roman with Holistic Dog Training, and today's conversation will be animal communication, behavior healing, and my special guest and wife, Barbara Book. Ever wonder why an animal communicator does what he do? That's a lot simpler than you think. The truth is that most people can intuitively connect and receive information from the animals in their lives. All it takes is a little practice. Telepathy, remote viewing, and medical intuition is possible, has been studied, everyone from academics to the government. We can use it as a tool to benefit our pets, both as trainers as a pet parents. So, welcome today, my dear friend, wife, and intuitive healer, Barbara Book. And I have to unmute her. Sorry for my voice.
You muted me. That's like
No.
classic. Don't you wish you have a mute button like in marriages where you just
Oh my God, that would be awesome. I could just mute myself.
when you're
So,
gassy, just like
right.
yeah.
Um, Let me tell you a quick story how I met Barbara. I was in Austin, was working with severe behavior cases. So Austin Shelter and EPA would send me kind of like those cases that unsolvables. And I was pretty good at that, except of one dog. I got stuck and I just wouldn't have progress and it was just wall. And the dog would do really bad behaviors. He would attack just dogs next to him and it was not ever ending story. So I knew I was doing my great job, but I was kind of blocked. Something didn't move on. And lucky, I knew Barbara from Facebook. She comes to Austin and to a workshop, and we had that chat. And she says, "You have dogs because we're supposed to have dogs here in our workshop, and the guy didn't show up." And I'm coming. So I brought two dogs, I think, and so this is how we met actually in person. So tell me a little bit about how did you end up doing what you do,
Mm.
and what
Um,
exactly do you do?
right now I'm with just what you call an intuitive healer. So I use my intuition and frequencies that we all have access to help animals and people. I'm primarily a people healer, but I do work with a lot of animals. It's about like a 70-30 split. Um, but I basically help them to kind of remember their wholeness and come back into a state of balance through using energy healing and my intuition as well. So I've been doing that since 2000. I started when I had a dog who got really sick and almost died. She was going to die actually, and the vet had got upset with me when I chose to bring her back to my house for a few days. I wanted to spend a few days with her. I'd had her for a long time, and yeah. So some people did some Reiki on her, just volunteered their time online and did some Reiki on her, and she healed like miraculously, like the day that they did the healing session. The vet actually used those words. He said this was a miracle healing because there's no way that this dog's liver would have regenerated that quickly.
So her
Plus, it was
liver
like,
was like sponge, right?
yeah,
Like
it was like
literally.
literally, it was like a sponge. It had a peach pit almost, or like a loofah sponge, had holes in it. And there was also, it was really small because it had deteriorated so much. And the liver didn't get larger, but all the holes were gone and it was functioning normally, which it shouldn't have been functioning normally. That's what was really interesting to me, is that it was functioning normally even though it was too small for her body. So
How old
that
was
was
the dog back then?
crazy. She at the time she was just almost 11.
Okay. And how long did she
Miraculous
live?
healing, she lived another 5 years, very healthy, until she
Okay.
got an infection that just didn't go away and it just got worse and worse. We can no energy, no nothing. So
Come
she's
on,
too
she
time
had
to
to
go.
die at some point.
Yeah, at some point, yeah. Although, like our Chihuahua's never gonna die because she's a robot.
But this
Um,
one.
yeah, so the first time I actually really started connecting in and recognizing that I could communicate with animals, and then of course I promptly forgot it when I was about, like 10 years old until I became an adult and started doing healing again, was my twin sister and I were in the woods in Oregon actually, and there was this little deer. that was hanging out. We were walking around in the woods, my twin and I, and we saw this deer, this baby deer. And the deer was, our parents taught us how to behave around wildlife. You don't touch wildlife, you don't approach wildlife, you don't do anything. So, we're sitting there, we're looking at it, like willing it to come over because we really wanted, to be close to it. And all of a sudden it was like I locked eyes with this deer, and I just started getting these images in my head. And I got these images of all the deer running, a bunch of, deer running. And there was something chasing them, and I didn't see what it was, but they were running. It was very scary and all that kind of stuff. And then um, the from the little deer's perspective, everybody was gone all of a sudden and got really scared. It got really scared and it didn't know where to go, so it started running around looking for its family, its herd, and it just got lost. And we were like, and it was so clear. It was like my own memory,
Hmm.
which is so bizarre. It's not something that I would have thought of at that age. I wouldn't think of predators and prey and something chasing after them. It just wouldn't even occur to me. So from that, where I'm sitting there staring at him, having this lock, and then my sister just starts saying to me, she goes, Barbara, Barbara, Barbara. And we look over, and there's this huge, huge buck. I don't know. I think there might have been elk, now that I know more about animals, because it was with huge antlers, and it's pissed that we're anywhere near it, and it just started chasing us. And so we ran, we ran, and we ran, and fortunately, we got to safety pretty fast. But it was a really profound experience for me, because I knew in that moment that somehow we had mind melded, and I was having this connection with this animal that I I didn't know you could have, you know. And then I would play around with it with our own pets, because we always had animals in my house growing up. My mom was like Dr. Doolittle. There's always animals. Um, she's just like you, Roman, with that. So yeah, that's how it happened. And then, obviously after my dog healed, so I kind of forgot about all that stuff. And then when my dog healed, I thought, wow, how did you do that? And I want to learn how to do it. And then everything started kind of coming back, my intuitive abilities, to be able to connect with animals, with people, to be able to do some medical intuitive stuff. Um, and I do use, most of the time with animals, I use a reconnective healing method, which is just a natural way of just playing around with energy and helping an animal to connect into that energy, and then wherever it goes, it goes. But while I'm doing that, I do get a lot of intuitive information. Hi, Jeff. um, I do get a lot of intuitive information, usually around that. um, okay, so is that your next question? Did that answer
Well,
your
yeah.
question?
How did you learn animal communication? Well, you
School of
had
Hard
you have a
Knocks.
gift, right? You have a gift as a child,
Yeah,
and usually with children, we suppress that because we think that's just nonsense. My
yeah.
child doesn't talk to animals. My child doesn't talk to people who passed, and so it becomes a bad thing to have.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that you overcome. It was triggered by your dog, right? That actually survived by applying healing over
Yeah,
distance.
yeah. So I kind of shut all that stuff down until, yeah, because when I was little, I was really intuitive. I remember talking to, fairies and spirits, and all that good stuff. And then when I started connecting in with animals, and I remember putting my hands on my animals and wanting to
Mm.
like fix them, because I didn't feel, and sometimes it would feel better. So they tended to kind of gravitate towards me. But nobody, I love my family. They're amazing. But, I grew up in a very science minded family, even though my mom was very into, my
Yep.
mom was very into like meditation and stuff like that. So she marched us down to get our mantras at the Transcendental Meditation Center when we were 10, and so honestly, um, I mean, so but there was, I wouldn't say that there was openness.
Mm.
There was always kind of like anxiety around it, or discomfort around it. And I just
Right.
started feeling like weird, and I started feeling like maybe I was crazy or had mental health issues, or something, when I was younger. So I chose to go ahead and like just go, well, it's not real. It's not real. It's not
So
real.
how do you perceive that information when you communicate? I mean, some people have the idea you pick up the phone, it's like hello, and the animal on the other side says hello, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
how
Well,
does this communication happen? In what level does it happen? Is it something you can hear, you can see what's going on there?
it depends on the animal, and everybody's different too, because we all have intuitive abilities that are just dormant lying. For some of us, they're dormant lying. For others, they're not. And so there's a bunch of primaries. It's called see. You could clear see, clear hear, clear know, clear taste, clear touch, clear smell. All right. So I use a combination of like all of those things. And this is non local information that we're picking up. We're picking up the energetic signatures of a thing, the frequency patterns of a thing. And then through this filtration system in the physical realm, we're making decisions about what that information is. What does it look like? What does it feel like? So for me, I'm very empathic. So I pick up a lot of physical issues, meaning through my body. So I'll feel a discomfort somewhere right off the bat. Like, say I'm working with a dog, and a lot of times I really don't know about the health issues. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So, maybe I feel it in my back right hip. And then what I'll do is I'll go in, I'll look at the other information that may be there. So, like my clear knowing, I do just kind of know stuff sometimes, but then a lot of times I'll get images. And the images are usually coming from the dogs or the cats
Mm.
or horse or pig or whatever I'm working on. Um,
So what
dogs
are
are
these images? Can we
so
compare them with an emotional image? Is how the dog emotionally see that image, or is it literally you see a
no,
tree and a
so
dog?
it's a mixture of the things. So um, let's say you send one of your clients over to me. You have a dog that's just acting really strangely, and you guys can't figure it out. That it's you're sure it's some sort of a behavior issue, but you can't figure out what's causing it, right? And even with all of your skills and all the things, you're like, there's something kind of buried here, and I don't understand what
I'm
it is.
usually biased because I know too much.
Right, right. So you'll send the dog over to me, and what I'll do is, as I'm doing healing session with the dog, I'll connect in and I'll start to pick up information. So sometimes I'll start to feel emotions, and then I kind of ask myself, okay, what are these emotions? Where are they coming from? What's the core of it? When did this start for this dog? And then I'll start to get like a movie playing in my head, usually,
Mm.
of what it looks like. And that is always connected into what the dog wants to show me, what the dog doesn't want to show me. Okay, I've
W-
started to learn that animals, they recognize, I believe that a lot of animals anyway connect with each other telepathically, that it's not just about body language and it's not just about sound or scent, like how many pheromones they're putting off. I know that those are all factors in it, but I do also believe that they communicate telepathically. Okay.
So Sheldrake, and I wrote it down here because I was
Rupert Sheldrake.
Robert Sheldrake actually talked about this morphogenetic field that
Uh-huh.
those animals share, and I
Fair.
think
Yeah.
it makes totally sense considering how can an animal evolve in different areas if they're not having a common communication level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we know from the sheeps in, I think it was in New Zealand, they were eating a specific plant, and suddenly the sheep start getting sick from that particular plant, and suddenly sheep from other areas start getting sick from the same plant, and nobody know what happened.
Right. Right.
So, and I think that's a great point to view. So we have scientific evidence that there is a communication layer that we don't see and we cannot touch, but
Mm-hmm.
it's out there, and we can communicate through it.
Well, we communicate non-locally, humans do all the time without realizing it.
Oh, you
You
know
walk.
when I'm coming home. Honey, are you
Yeah.
already here? Like, yeah, 7 minutes,
Yeah, that's how
eight
dog
minutes,
yeah,
six
like,
minutes.
dogs will know when you're coming home because they check in on you all intuitively, and they can see what you're doing.
There is a book
So
about that.
yeah.
It's a
So,
book about that from Sheldrake. Sorry. Dogs
yeah.
that know when their owners are coming home. And there is also BBC study done in real time, video record a dog in the owner's house and the owner at work, and nobody knew what time he will come home. So there are two cameras placed synchronized with the timer, and then the producer decided when that will happen, and nobody knew about it. And he
Mm-hmm.
said now. And so the person gets ready, packed his stuff, and gets up and walks to the door and get ready to leave. And the dog gets up and gets to the door.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not the standard time he would go to the
Right.
door, right?
Yeah.
So that was a BBC kind of version of showing that it works and it's being done.
Yeah, and people do that too. So, like, even with situations like you walk into a room and you can feel tension in there, and you won't. Maybe you're not. Maybe the people that were in there left, or everybody just looks normal, but you could feel something's up. Or the great one with the eyes in the back of your head, you could feel somebody staring at you, and so
Yeah.
you turn around,
In the
and
bus,
or
you
it
turn
is
around
somebody
or in the
staring at
bar, and
you.
you're like, "Why are you staring at my wife like that? Like,
Yeah,
how
that's
did I know?"
energy. That's energy.
Right?
We're a lot bigger than we are. We're not just this third dimensional material reality. We have larger fields. There's tons of studies done on this. A lot of it's funny because um, a lot of science is not interested. That's why I really like Rupert Sheldrake. He was very, very well respected scientist who feels like science is too much in a box. And that, it's almost like it's become religious doctrine. Instead of questioning everything, they're basing their everything on certain rules because they believe that we know everything that there is to know about reality and about material reality and even quantum mechanics. And so it's kind of like they base everything on these certain principles. And so the thing of it is he just likes to have this open mind. His wife is actually an energy healer. He likes to have this open mind about this stuff and just say, hey, let's think outside the box. Because if I can't explain why an animal, why a lizard can regenerate its tail perfectly when it gets cut off, there's a reason for it. So let's look at all the variables. Let's look at all the things, because there's nothing in its genetics that tell it to do that. So how is it doing it? Right. So that's when he started to get interested in that. And so just recognizing that, yeah, there's all these separate parts of us. We're very multidimensional. We're living in a much larger space than we realize. And we do communicate with each other. Like if we get angry at each other, if you can see energy, which I can see it. Sometimes you're throwing little barbs at, you can see the energy throwing, or you'll see somebody's energy pulling away from somebody else, like their field literally goes backwards. So just recognizing that if I can see it, dogs are much more sensitive to us. They're much more connected into into their bodies. They're much more connected into the earth and the earth energy and all that good stuff. So, I think they don't have egos, and they don't have anybody telling them that they're crazy for communicating in the way that they do. I'm going to even venture to say that a lot of children being born nowadays communicate telepathically as well. So you have a lot of children who are being born on the autism spectrum who may be nonverbal, who you have their parents used to bring them to me, and we would communicate telepathically to the point of where I would just tell them telepathically, this is how we talk here, and they would just start talking to their parent. So that happened multiple times. Recognizing that I think that it's just the natural state of beings in general on this planet, but we lost it. We got cut off from it. And so I know we're going way out there away from the whole animal kingdom realm, but it is the same thing with people. We're part of the animal kingdom. We always forget that. So
Yeah, I
um,
always wonder because when I'm working with dogs, I recognize biologically they have a broader visual spectrum, they have a broader sound spectrum, and of course they should have a broader energetic spectrum. I I noticed when I know it sounds weird, but I learned about energy when I was fishing. I used to do spear fishing. I stopped doing that. And I wonder every time I went spear fishing, I would have my spear and my goggles, and I was in the water
like
or being a
spear,
big.
like
Yeah,
spear
yeah,
fishing.
right, like
Okay.
with a harpoon and thing, and super organized, right, like a super Cousteau kind of type.
Uh-huh.
And then there were no fish, and I was like, they're smart because they see how I'm dressed, right? And so I would just give up, threw the harpoon out there, walked back in, and voila, all the fish were there. And I was like, oh, it must be the harpoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hiding the harpoon very close to me so they couldn't see it. And I went out there and there was nobody there. And then
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that the difference between being seeing and not seeing animals is my idea of what's going on. If I would go into the water as a predator, I would be being perceived as a predator and the prey will disappear. And if I went in there neutral, I would see the fish. And actually, I made that a tactic back then. I was in the water feeling scared and vulnerable, and all the big fish came out to hunt me. That was the interesting part of everything. And that clicked because I'd said, and that later confirmed with a movie that I watched on National Geographic. And I know usually that is set up, but that particular one was a whole sequence. There was a tiger approaching a prey animal, and he was literally not moving, and until all the other animals moved except of one, and that's what everybody targeted. So there's a communication going on between prey and predator that tells him, I'm about to make that decision and give you the last chance to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, when we're working with dogs, we see the dogs also communicate with us because they expect us to understand what they're doing. And it tells us, and I remember seeing my three-legged dog. It was really severe aggressive, and I knew if I would open that gate, he would bite me. That was kind of a standard situation. So I had already
Right.
my protection gear off. But I noticed every time I open the door, or before I open the door, I would get this sensation, like a little cold breeze coming towards me. And I noticed that because I try to figure out what do I miss? Why cannot stop that from happening? And that one time I made a decision to respond to that. It wasn't air blow. It was just a feeling. You know how you get goosebumps, right? And I get this from front side coming towards me. And so I would say, hey, I got a cookie instead. And I gave him a
Mm-hmm.
cookie, a biscuit. And all of a sudden, he didn't attack. And that was what actually made that switch to me. I was just, hey, they're communicating in a language that we are not paying attention to, and it's a constant communication. It's I'm letting you know how I feel, so you let me know how you feel. So it's an emotional conversation. Dogs don't tell us what to do, they only tell us how they feel, and we have to adjust to it. It's just nature. Nature says, I'm a tree, I'm here, who are you? Right? And we are just violent.
Sometimes they try to tell us what to do. Like,
Yeah.
when our chihuahua tries to stick her ear in your mouth so that you'll lick her ear, which is the grossest thing ever. Well, nobody actually licks her ear, but
Ew.
that's bossy. She's bossy.
And
So,
other times,
kind of going back to what you're saying is, um, I think that it's important to note too that communication is two-way. You open that door up. The communication is two-way. Understand that animals, yes, they do a lot of communicating through body language and smells and even eyes and the way that they're moving their just body language in general. But also recognize there's another layer to it, which is intuitive, which is telepathic and picking up your energy and what it looks like. They're very sensitive. Most dogs are. Some dogs who really, um, there are some dogs who are not sensitive to that stuff. But for the most part, they are. And especially the closer they are to living in a dog family structure for any sort of a time. So if you've got like a big group of dogs, or they maybe got to stay with their family for 6 or 7 or 8 months, which would be normal, before they start going out on their own, you're going to notice that even street dogs, they're just more sensitive and communicative, and they have expectations. So it's not just about you picking up their information, but it's about you sending them information too. So like when I do sessions, um, sometimes if there's a situation like they're going to go in and they're going to have surgery done, and I'll have a um, client call me and say, could you do some healing before the surgery? We have to get these teeth pulled or whatever. Can you do it before, or we're going on a trip and he's going to be in a crate for the week and he hates the crate. Is there anything you can do about it? It's like, not only am I kind of doing healing with the dog to kind of heal maybe that fear or anxiety that it might have, but I'm also sending images about, okay, this is what's going to happen. And this is going to be the end result. So I'll actually send mental pictures for them. And a lot of times that can be very supportive. Um, so it goes both ways. As a communicator,
Mm.
you want to be able to tell them things as well as receive. And it's very interesting because, you can really start to connect in with your animals if you just start paying attention. I think most of us, we don't pay attention to what our animals are trying to tell us.
Yeah, because
Whether
we're
it's
brainwashed that we have to talk to the animals and we have to be the boss and the
And we have to
leader
always tell them what to
and
do because
to
they're so
whisper
stupid.
because we have to talk always in one direction, never listen to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So I notice, um, especially with my animals, I really struggle because I'm so biased. So I get these informations all the time, and there's a lot of chatting, and sometimes they're lying, like, "Oh, I need to go out because I've never been outside," and you're like, "I just let him
Yeah.
outside." I was like,
People don't realize that animals
yeah,
lie.
we don't say any names,
We're not gonna say any names, Mugsy. I know you can
right,
hear me in
Mugsy?
there.
And one interesting thing that I noticed that when we're working with animals that are outside of their family, we get more clear information because we just aim. I think we're more focused to that.
Well, you don't
Um,
have your ego doesn't get in the way. You don't have a vested interest in the outcome. For
right.
me, like, um, I I'm being paid for a service, right? When I'm working with clients. So I do the best that I can, but I'm not biased about the outcome. I give them what I got, With my animals, I care a lot, and I freak out when they get sick. It's really, so my fears come into play there. And they don't come into play when I'm working with somebody else's animals. So, yeah, that's 100% why. When your fears come in, then you become biased, and then then you start to filter the information based on uh, your personal connection into it. All intuitives do that on one level or another when they're working with people and animals. Is that it is a filtering system. We're taking non-local information and bringing it into local reality,
Hmm.
right? And it goes through the brain, and that brain has a lot of memories and a lot of thoughts and feelings about things, right? And then we've also got all this unconscious stuff on the lower layers of our energy field that we don't remember, and triggers and all that kind of stuff. So it has to filter through something. That's why intuitives aren't going to be 100% accurate all the time with things, because they have their own stuff that it has to enter, information has to move through, and this brain that processes it, and then the mouth that starts talking. So that is why, when, like, we have a problem with our dogs, I will usually go to external people that I trust. If it's just some energy healing, I can do that. I can share energy all day long. But if I have to figure out what's going on, um, I will get a second opinion
Yeah,
because I'm
because
biased.
we want the animal to get healthy because it's our animal, and sometimes that interferes with what's in the best and highest good for the animal, which
Yeah,
means sometimes we have to let go and we can go there.
yeah,
Um, some Glenn, um, he works with Pyrenees. Says when I go to a dog that everyone labels aggressive or reactive, I go with no expectations. So also as trainers, we are kind of preoccupied because people tell us stories, and we have to believe those stories when we go into this session. So the good thing is, having an intuitive healer as a backup, we can hear the dog's story. And one problem that I see with behavior when we work on behavior is everybody has a story. The adopter has a story. The rescue has a story. The trainer has a story. The one who's being attacked has his own story. But nobody listens to the dog's story.
yeah.
When I tune in, sometimes I get a completely different story, and I have to kind of recognize that the dog sees this with his own perspective.
Hmm.
It's kind of like the dog doesn't see a car; he sees a vehicle. He doesn't see A car sometimes he sees a predator that
Mhm.
comes up to him very quickly. Sometimes we assume a trauma happened because the other dog attacked the dog, but in reality, it's the leash was attached to the dog and his owner couldn't help him. So the dog gets completely different story.
Mhm.
So I think we
Well,
should always pay attention to that.
yeah, and Glenn too, the thing that is important about what you said is that, in woohoo circles we call that holding space. So
Right?
basically what that means is you're not there's no there's no expectations. You're just open to whatever the dog is. And you're just holding space for that, right? You're not expecting
Hmm.
anything from them. You're not having an expectation. You're just seeing them as a whole being, whatever that may look like. You're open to whatever it is. And so that's like when I'm doing healing, that's what I'm doing as well. The more information you give me, the more difficult it can be. I have people who send me like these 20-page emails about all the different healers that they've gone to and all of the things that have happened. And I understand your story is sacred to you, but it doesn't help me because I'm I'm choosing to see you as a whole being who may be going through something, and I'm not going to label it, and I'm not going to say, well, you're sick or you're this or you're that. There's you just and from that, people can kind of like relax into it and recognize that this story is just a story. And the one reason I love working with animals is because they don't have a story. They're not trying to tell you a story. They may tell you what happened. You know, when I was a year and a half old, somebody take me up into a box and threw me in a dumpster. Like with what happened with my Chihuahua, which I know for a fact because I found her.
Hmm.
But they may tell you that story, and it may give a behaviorist or a trainer um, a bit of a better understanding, like as an intuitive, maybe a little bit of a better understanding of, oh, okay, of maybe how to help them. But just like Len said, yeah, just going into it with really no expectations and getting out of the way, um, and just connecting in with the animal and just starting to kind of like observe what's happening.
Hmm.
So for most people, they can observe it on a physical level. For me, I can observe it on a physical level, but I can also observe it on an energetic level because energy don't lie.
Right, right.
And so that for me, fortunately, that's the difference.
Well, I need to kind of put something in here um, to kind of up your credentials a little bit. You work with an organization back in time where actually they were finding people who were lost, right?
Yeah, it's called Find Me. So it's a nonprofit organization. It's started by a federal agent, a retired federal agent, who was he worked in missing persons, missing children's division, and he they do use psychics and in regularly.
How
Um,
accurate is that? I mean, I know the accuracy. I know your
it's
accuracy.
not that
I would
accurate.
say I
So
would I
so
would
so
say I would give it a 90% on my side.
no. Um, I disagree with that. I think that it depends on the psychic. There's some psychics that are really accurate. And honestly, the way that he did it was he had like 150 psychics that he worked with all at the same time. So everybody filled out a report, um, and sent it into him. And general consensus, who the majority rules. You got 80% of the people saying that the missing person's dead. That person's dead. You have 80 people saying they're alive and they're in, Poughkeepsie. Then that's where they are. That's what he tells the police or the government officials. And so and it was really cool. It was very well respected organization because you just give them what you got. We had a lot of really good tools. We had a search and rescue team that would go to the places where the psychics said that they were, and we found a lot of people. And you never hear about it because you can't use it in a court. So just say like, based on a tip, which is true, this is where we found the body out in the middle of the forest, in
Right,
a
right.
in a grave that nobody would ever be able
Yeah,
to
and I
find.
remember sometimes we're watching TV and it's like, oh, I work on that case. So,
Yeah,
oh, okay. So one
yeah.
thing that I notice when we look into animal perspective, animal um, training, we
Mhm.
also see that. Hold on, we have many questions here. Thank you, Yvonne. And also, Bonnie. has a case with a dog. His name is Gus, and yeah, definitely, he can benefit from Barbara. Now, when I'm working with animals with have severe aggression, I recognize that it's usually their perception of their environment what makes a big difference. And I see that sometimes they have a different perspective. They see different things. And I think one piece would be a trauma brain. The trauma doesn't let them see the reality of it, or so there's interference. And sometimes they do see things that we don't. And I know some people says, "Oh, the dog can smell if you're a bad person." I don't think that is true. However, I think the dog can see certain energy
You can see
fields,
energy. I believe
right?
that.
I,
Yep.
I have a picture here from um, a colleague that we can call her colleague because she's also an energy healer, um, Barbara Brennan. And so
Hmm.
she actually designed a little bit and shows us how those things look like from a human perspective. Okay. Um, and so let me grab a better picture.
What this is showing is like different emotions and people doing different activities and what the energy field looks like. The
Hmm.
first one was kind of like an animal communication, or I'm sorry, animal um, energetic communication
Hmm.
of how we interact with others, or even just interacting with ourselves, and how the energy field can look. And then the second one is doing kind of different activities and things like that.
Right, right.
Um,
And
so,
then we have different layers on this energy field that I
right.
feel some dogs can see.
Right. Usually, when we're talking about communication, we're talking about these first four layers here: this astral body and mental body, emotional, and etheric. So
Hmm.
you're getting into like complex stuff here. But really, most of the communication happens on the astral level, which is, I call it the layer of communication, or the relationship layer of the energy field. And so, we all have this aspect to us, this part of our field that where we interact with each other's, where we communicate with each other. It's like when people go on their astral journeys and things like that. It's the same. It's the same part of your energy field.
So
So,
how do I benefit from it as a trainer? I usually when I reach out to you is because I get information. I'm not very clear about that information. I have a behavior case, sometimes complex. We have a dog who bit someone, attacked someone, killed something, and we don't have a clear background. Things
yeah.
just don't make any sense because there's a missing link into that. And this
Mhm.
is where I reach out to Barbara. I says, "Hey, Barbara, we have this case going on. This is the behavior pattern, and this is the dog. We don't have a clear history about something. I do believe there is a medical underlying condition, but I'm not sure what to point it out. And sometimes I don't want to get directly involved because I'm too biased in the situation. So I want kind of like a second opinion on that. And that's why I sent them to you. I remember a case of a bulldog who was attacking one of his elder parents of the owner. And I was kind of like, well, that would be a tough one because the elder person doesn't have, body control, and this bulldog would just go after him like anytime he would see him. Can you remember that story?
Yeah. So this was a client that you just could not figure it out. It was only when it was her father, and it was only when he was, for whatever reason, putting on his jacket, I think it was. Um, Basically, Roman worked with this dog for a while, and they just couldn't figure it out because this is the sweetest, most loving dog in the whole world. But man, just went after the dad. They couldn't figure it out. Dogs do have, they like certain people and they dislike certain people, right? It's just they're natural, just like we are. For whatever reason, they might take a dislike into someone. And you had kind of gotten to that point of where you're like, well, maybe he just doesn't like him and I don't know what to do, which is super rare because you can always figure it out.
Mhm.
And that's
Well,
when you
finally we figure it out
oh,
because
yeah. So
you give me
basically
some hints.
what happened was is I did a healing session, and then the dog started showing me images of interactions with this man. And then basically we figured out that the dog had been shock collar trained. Now, she didn't tell me this at first. They didn't do it. I think it was a previous owner. The dog had been shock collar trained, and the person kept the remote
They're
in the
in the
pocket.
pockets of
And so
the
they would
coat.
always put a jacket on, and every time they put that jacket on, they would put the remote in the collar, and then the dog would feel pain whenever that jacket was on. They didn't do it out and put, they did it from the pocket. So I told her that, and she was like, "Oh my God, this dog has been shock collar trained before we got him."
We didn't know
Um,
about it.
we
We
didn't know,
didn't.
but they knew about the shock collar training. They just didn't know about that part of it. So as soon, and then Roman knew what to do after that, and the dog, yeah, and they became best friends. And until this gentleman passed, they were best friends.
Yeah,
So
those are little
yeah,
things, right? And I
it's little
remember
things.
when we worked at Austin Animal Shelter with this dog who had twice hit by a horse in his head, so he had like
He got
um
kicked. Yeah, he got kicked. I think it was 3 times he was at his fosters by horses, and they
right,
did multiple surgeries and stuff.
and
Yeah,
they couldn't stop his tick. What we do is air snapping and biting whatever was next to him, right?
yeah.
And then Barbara did the session like literally on the spot outside of the facility without everybody knowing. And then
She's like,
24
"Give me
hours
my hand."
later, she called us and it's like, "Oh my God, you have no clue what just happened." And I was like, "Oh shit, he beat someone."
Well, he
He,
no, he
no, he
also jumped in
stopped.
the car
He
on the
jumped
way.
suddenly in the car and it's happy go lucky.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
have actually that video footage from before and after.
yeah. Because basically, the dog was there was a lot of issues. One of them was he would panic when going into the car, like intense anxiety. Because the only time he ever went in the car was to go to the vet or to, you know, to do whatever. And so there was this huge panic about it. And so she asked me to do a session. Roman was there for doing setting up foster training for Austin Animal Center, and
Right?
we did a healing for animals class. And so, yeah, so the dog was terrified to get in the car. It was a huge ordeal because he's a beautiful pitty, but he's pretty strong. He would snap at the air. It was just crazy.
Yeah, that's the
So
dog here, right?
yeah, she said that after the session, she brought him back to the car and he jumped right in the car. And that was her first clue that something was different. So if you look at the top is him before. He's really hyper vigilant. He was
And we
snapping,
see his whole body stance is like hard.
and he would just freeze up and just not be able to move. He would see things that weren't there. I mean, he was a mess.
Yeah, they were concerned that they couldn't be adopted out.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause he would get reactive to things for no reason. It just could, it was just a brain injury,
You will see
you
how
know?
it will air snapped in a bit. It happens in a
Mhm.
second or two. Here you go. Did you see
He
it?
would just start doing that, whether there was a fly there or
I don't
not.
know.
And then he would
I
get
can be
obsessed
there.
with it and he would just start
That's
doing it for
funny.
like an hour and he wouldn't stop.
Yeah, and that's the dog next day.
He's all
Yeah.
soft and relaxed
Yeah,
and
you see his tail wagging. He's super happy,
Tail wax.
and it didn't air snap anymore. And he was adopted a week later. Look at this difference.
he's interested with the space. He's like
Right, right.
he got into Lorraine's purse, you know. Yeah. So that's what energy healing can do. I don't think I got any intuitive information about that one. That was just an energy session, which is a whole other thing. So I mixed the two together. So
Mhm.
I do I do both energy healing and then during the session, that's when I actually get the information.
Mhm.
So I don't do just intuitive readings for animals like animal communicators do, who that's all they do. I keep it within the confines of healing because I feel like the story is not as important as the as helping the dog with their healing process, however that manifests, whether it's me doing a healing session and then giving the information to Roman or the family member to help them to address it better. Hold on
I
one
feel
second.
that
I have to. The sunlight just came right in
right,
my
right.
eyes.
So I feel that the problem here when we talk about behavior is we usually get stuck with the story. We stuck with a pre-existing behavior stamp, and I see people says, "Oh, my dog is aggressive," and so we go with that idea of a dog being aggressive.
Mhm.
But the reality is that a dog needs a healing. So instead of focusing on the dog is aggressive idea, we can focusing in the potential. And the potential starts if we recognize that there is a healing process is going to happen, and we have to see this healing potential instead of getting stuck with his past of a behavior. And that's what I see very important from a behavior perspective. I need that potential. I need
Mhm.
that additional information. I need to know that in all these layers, if I work on 3D on a trauma case and the dog has severe trauma, I want to know that this trauma is not bleeding through the other layers. Because even the trauma, when we talk about trauma and behavior, this trauma and behavior of the environmental triggers, it's also being updated in this morphogenetic field.
Mhm.
And so it's going to bleed back down again. So I want
Yeah,
to
it's
clean
feeding
that,
information into
right?
it. Yeah.
In many
Mhm.
cases I work with some dogs, I recognize that some dogs do genetic trauma healing. They're not working only on themselves, just like we people, they work on a collective.
Mhm.
For example, some breeds who are being known to be used for certain things and abused for certain things, they come here lately to heal that aspect. And so they represent certain behaviors because they need to find their way out of there. And that experience that is theirs is being then shared in the collective. So, as a behaviorist, we need to know exactly how to help the dog get to that experience without making additional trauma and additional punishment and additional fear, because that's
Mhm.
what usually we do. No, we think on a behavior has to be punished or corrected, not recognizing that a behavior has to be healed. And healing means the dog has to have to come to an emotional experience that is better than the one he had in the past.
Yeah.
And this is what I like with this behavior healing and your support for behaviorists. And I feel like whoever who's watching here and a behaviorist, check it out, see the potential. I mean, I know people who reach out from you. I have a colleague in Hong Kong. She reaches to you all the time with their dogs who came in from the
Yeah,
meat
she
market,
does.
etc.
She's
Right?
amazing. She does rescue, but she's also a trainer as well. So she's a relationship based trainer, like Roman is. And so she works with street dogs and dogs from meat markets and all that good stuff. Because and she does send clients to me um, because of health issues, but also if there's intense, a lot of these dogs have really intense trauma and they have intense behavior issues, like especially a street dog who gets adopted. It's really kind of traumatizing sometimes for animals to go from one place with one set of rules into another place with another set of rules. And you have an animal, even if it's an animal in a home, there's one set of rules in the home. And then they, for whatever reason, they get put into the shelter. And then there's another set of rules in the shelter. And then when they maybe go to a foster, there's another set of rules. And then when they get to their forever home, by that time, they're just like completely confused and they don't understand how to play this game. They don't understand people because people aren't honest. We smile and say nice things when we don't mean them, and that shows up in the energy field. Intentions and actions and words that are in
Right,
a
right.
misalignment show up in your energy field as distortion patterns that I believe animals can see. That's why sometimes they like some people and they don't like others. It's not that that person's a bad person. Maybe they just try to be too nice, and there's this anger seething under the surface and the dog can feel it, because dogs are very empathic. They can pick up your emotions, they pick up your anxiety, they pick up you hold the leash, it goes from you all the way down down into the dog. They pick it up, and
Right,
because
right.
they're sensitive, they're psychically sensitive that way. It's not just about body language. You could have the most relaxed body language in the world, but underneath you're anxious and they will pick it up. And I don't think it's scent. Could
One
be.
thing that I also see when we adopt out a dog, and this is where you usually also help, is a dog comes in with a connection, with energetic connection of his past,
Hmm.
with owners, with places, with his own family, with his group of dogs that were in, with his siblings. And then we cut this off and then bring the dog into the rescue and the shelter is being adopted out. How do you work with those energetic connections between the dogs and his past?
You mean as far as like healing it, or you
The
mean like,
healing aspect, yeah, because the dog still feel connected. He still hopes that he's gonna find his old person again. Sees
yeah?
dogs escape, they're being reactive to other people that they cannot bond because they still have the secure attachment, still connected to the previous owner.
Well, I just tell them what's up, and I'm not with my words. I show them images. I show them images, and um, also usually dogs are weird. Even if they miss somebody, they'll go through grieving process. But if they're happy in their current space, they'll usually be okay with it. They will shift their allegiance to their new people, if they're being communicated with properly, if their needs are being met, and needs
Right,
aren't
right.
just food and water and rules. There's other emotional needs are really important for animals too, and we fail with that one quite a bit. But yeah, just working energetically with dogs, just kind of helping to maybe remove that energy out of the field of their old owners and send it back where it came from, helping the dog to be able to express itself emotionally, because we do tend to stifle animals' emotions. We don't find them acceptable. We want them to be a certain way, which is happy and obeying at all times. And, it's not fair to them because they are emotional beings just like we are. And, we do that to ourselves too, right? We stuff down everything all the time. So we teach our dogs how to stuff down their emotions. And then that's when we ended up with a reactive or an
We
aggressive
don't
dog.
teach them, we punish them,
Well,
we
yeah, we punish
suppress them.
them. Right. We suppress them. And
And
that's
like
what
that,
shock collars are a big
any
part of that.
aversive any
Yeah.
aversive color, even you yelling at your dog,
Yeah.
also is suppression. And people don't get that actually those kind of our behaviors towards the dog actually can cause severe energetic interference.
Mhm.
Okay, so tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about how it looks like to you from your perspective. If you know check with the dog, and can you see stuck trauma? Do you
Yeah,
see that this
absolutely.
energetic field
So
can be compressed in a
yeah,
space
so
in a dog?
part of being an intuitive healer is being able to go into the energy field and take a look at what things look like. And you have all these different layers to your energy field that contain information. So, an example would be the first layer of the energy field. This is all the unconscious stuff, all the old emotional energy that wasn't allowed to fully express itself. Again, with most dogs, they're not allowed to express their emotions, they're not allowed to express anger or sadness or fear. um, we'd never respond well to their emotions or in a way that's appropriate to allow them to express it, but also help them to overcome it. There's a it's a delicate kind of a thing that you have to do as a trainer or a behavior consultant or behaviorist, to help a dog to move through their emotional state without causing harm to somebody, or ripping up all the furniture in your house. So you can go in there and you can see that stuff, and then you can see the core of what caused that emotion
Mhm.
to begin with, and that's where I can start to get the images and things like that.
So
You can
some
also pick up like physical stuff in the same way if you're looking at the third layer of the energy field, which is just the physical body. The physical body is still energy. This is energetic frequency that's kind of vibrating at a specific pattern that creates this illusion of solidity, but it's still energy. It's still quantum particles spinning, for lack of a better way to put it, and then receiving information from the brain, consciously or unconsciously. So, it's I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
When
So
I'm under it.
one of our viewers asked here, Brian, how did Barbara learn to quiet her mind enough to hear the animals? That is what I struggle with. So she's obviously intuitive and she gets this information, but sometimes you have this, your own sounds and your own inner voices voicing over it. How do you quiet that down?
Well, the first thing that you do is you just start to get to know yourself and how you feel. So you can start in the morning when you wake up in bed and just start getting in the body, meaning start at the top of your head and go all the way down to your feet and just notice how you're feeling. Notice, do you feel do you feel tension or tightness there anywhere? Do you feel really good? How's your emotional state? Are you tense? Are you relaxed? If
Hmm.
you're tense, where are you feeling that tension in your body? Like, actually getting really in the body is the first step to starting to connect in with your intuition, right? So that you start to know what you feel like, right? And then after you do that, then you just check in with the brain and you just sit and observe your thoughts. You just observe them. You don't judge them, you just observe them, because you're not your thoughts. You're this body. So starting to kind of really align with yourself and know and just start to hear your own thoughts, without making a judgment on them. Start to feel how you feel without making a judgment on it. If you have an emotion, you can just, if you notice an emotion like anxiety, you can just relax your body and focus on the physical sensations of the emotion. Okay. You just get out of your head and you do that. So this is, yeah, I guess people would call it mindfulness, starting to become mindful, and doing that and having that become a practice, maybe twice a day, starting in the morning and doing that. And then when you go to bed, doing the same thing and just noticing, not getting into the story. Your mind, I'm sure, will be telling a story, but just observing it. That's the first step. And then the second step is to start to incorporate some type of a meditation. Um, Even if it's a minute a day. And really, what you do is you're not trying to listen to something online or anything like that. You just sit and just be and just notice the thoughts in your head. Um, and eventually what will happen, you just create the intention to listen. Um, and so when you're meditating, you're just creating an intention to just be in the space and allow whatever happens to happen. That's where we get stuck with ourselves and we make it difficult for us to be able to really connect in with other animals, is because we don't know how to listen. We don't know how to listen to ourselves. So once we start learning how to just listen and observe without constantly judging everything that happens, like Glenn said, he goes in with no expectations. When you're going into just doing meditation or even just connecting in with yourself on that level, you just want to do it with no expectations, but just sitting and being and observing. Um, so, what was the other part of that question,
Oh,
Roman?
that was it. That was it.
Okay.
She asked how can you clear your mind around, before
Yeah.
you get to this
You
information.
have to know where you end and something else begins too. So if you're super empathic, you have to know how you feel. Um, if you're constantly having self-talk and things like that, you have to know what your images look like. I mean, I have a chatty Sally brain. So with animals, when I create the intention to connect in with that animal and to be of service, to just take a step back and just say, okay, how can I be of service? And then I just sit and I just let information come to me. Again, not judging, not labeling, anything like that. But I also know what I feel like. I know what my emotions feel like. I know the kinds of images that come into my head. I start to notice that the texture of it, if it's an animal communicating or another person communicating with me, I start to notice the texture is different. It just feels different. It doesn't feel like mine because I know what mine feels like.
Right,
Um,
right.
if that makes sense.
Um, in my program, I have this synergistic healing program. Basically, walk people through that concept of 5 steps and how they can find blockages in their animals, how to identify the reason for blockages, um, interpreting the blockages, like translating that in the dog language, and then healing the individual components, and then maintaining a healthy energy field. And I learned that because I worked with Barbara. I did an intuitive development class a couple of years back in exchange to dog training. And I feel it was very, very helpful. It actually added something very important in my skill set, is to tap into this energetic aspect on working with animals, and using my intuitive skills into my business. And I think it's not just limited to dog training and behavior, it's also medical can be very helpful. If you are intuitive, if you are more an alternative veterinarian, you can also tap into that information and gather more information for your patient. You can always use the reference. At some point, it's your own decision anyway what you're going to do, right?
Yeah.
Have you worked with veterinarians before?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with veterinarians before. I've worked with all different types of pet industry
Professionals.
providers and professionals, and who do all different types. One of the humane societies has a vet that sends people to me every once in a while as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just yeah, I've worked with all different kinds. I worked with a zookeeper one time.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. You work with people, you work with children, you work with children who are non-verbal. Okay, you work with animals, you work with snake. I think you remember you work with the snake. You
I
work
did.
right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nobody knew what's going on with the snake, and you start
Yeah.
asking questions, and everybody, oh right, and you
Yeah. Yeah. The snake was gonna have to be put down. Um, and they just couldn't figure out what was wrong. The vet was a specialist and couldn't figure out what was wrong, and we ended up doing a session, and you know, I think the session actually probably corrected the situation, but they got more information out of it too, so they were able to start a treatment plan, which was
perfect.
very, very helpful. So
So if people want to reach out to Barbara, you see that website here. You go to barbarabook.org. You have upcoming classes, and I think you're gonna. We were discussing the doing a healing for animal class. So if
yeah.
you guys are interested in healing for animal class, so learn what we do as well.
Hmm.
Then you may want to reach out to us, send us an email, says, "Hey, I want to join the class."
Hmm.
We're organizing. We have to go to Texas in May and do a workshop
Right.
with
It'll be
Texas
after
Juvenile
May, and
Detention
I'm doing
Center,
my mentoring groups as well. So,
right?
yeah, if you just go to my website, there's my services page is on there, but there's also like a workshop page as well. Roman has one on his too. It'll be posted in both. So I plan on doing that, but I also plan on doing an evergreen kind of pre-recorded class on helping people to connect in with their animals. Um, and start to be able to kind of listen to them a little bit better. So it's I guess you could call it an intuitive development class, but it's geared around animal communication specifically, and how you can kind of help your dog not just to understand them better, but also be able to connect in with them on a deeper level, so that you can start to listen to them and what their needs are, not just not just intuitively, but um, just in general, just start to pay more attention to what's going on around you in general. That's coming up soon, so look out for that as well.
Barbara, thank you so much. Very,
Thank you
very
for having
interesting.
me.
And we had our separate session in different rooms in the same house because I don't feel well. And so I have to cough all the time, which means every time I cough, nobody will hear you.
He is having allergies. You can't
I
it's
have
kind of right out the
allergies.
window, but oh my gosh, everything is in bloom right now, and it is like Roman's allergies are
I
just
love
hitting him.
Oregon. I love my mask. So thank you
Yeah,
again so much. Thank you so
thank
much, you
you.
guys, for your comments. And we were gonna follow up with your comments. To reach Barbara and me, you can always find us in the comment line. I shared the links to us to talk about. And thank you so much for your good words. And I know many of you guys. Thank you, Brian. That's Brian.
Oh yeah, also too, Roman, let's just point out too, like people who are in the pet service industry or pet professionals, um, trainers and all that kind of stuff. This having these skills are hugely helpful to you. So just throwing it out there and recognizing that this stuff is helpful for everybody, and everybody has these abilities. They just sometimes aren't activated yet.
I work with my clients all the time. I always check in with them and see do they have intuitive skills. So sometimes I do some couple of tests because I want them by the end of the session to be able to communicate with their dogs and try to find out those little itches and pains that my dog has. Right.
Yeah.
I
Most
remember a
people are
person.
empathic who have animals.
Right. And some
They're
people don't
sensitive and
know
empathic.
it. Right.
Yeah.
We need to point
Yeah.
it out. Like, hey, you can do this. A
Mhm.
little bit more, a little bit better. The more you exercise yourself, the more you start trusting yourself, the better you get.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I work with horses, I work with
Mhm.
cats, I work with goats. Yep. But my specialty are dogs, and also I work with people at the same time. But Barbara is the professional, the super professional. He always send most of these people over there because I just feel comfortable about it. I just
I've been
want
doing it a
my,
little bit
my
longer with
client
the
to
healing.
get 100% the best option available.
Yeah.
Good.
All
Thank you
right.
so much again. Talk to you guys
Bye,
soon.
everybody.
Oh, wait, I need to close. I need to close our show. Bye, everyone.